following is brought to you by Haney Farms, your canola, corn, and cereal seed experts. Find us at haneyfarms.com. We're joined right now on RealAgriculture.com by Bruce Burnett with the Canadian Wheat Board. Welcome today, Bruce.
It's good to be here.
Bruce, the wheat price. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about the bullishness behind soybeans and especially corn. What is kind of your feeling or your outlook for wheat right now?
Well, certainly over the last month almost now, wheat prices have started to take off, and there's a few reasons behind it, and some of them are related to the corn and soybean situation because those two situations are still quite bullish. But in terms of the wheat itself, we've seen a number of things happen. I think the most specific one being the Australian weather conditions during their harvest. That's caused some concerns, especially on the higher quality side. So we've seen the market try to build a premium in on quality. As well, combined with that, the market's now paying attention to next year's crop. And there's a few areas of the world that are experiencing some weather problems, and specifically related to the U.S., parts of western Kansas, eastern Colorado, parts of Nebraska are very dry, and emergence of the crop has been less than optimal in those areas. So there's a few things happening on the wheat side that's causing the market to push up over the past 3 weeks.
Well, you mentioned next year's crop. You know, when we saw a very strong winter wheat planting in Ontario this fall. With the situation, with the run up in corn and soy and lentils, do you think that wheat's really going to have to is it going to have trouble competing against those crops in terms of getting acres in the ground?
In Western Canada specifically, next year, our feeling is that wheat's going to increase a bit in acreage, but certainly it's going to be one of those crops that is going to have a tough time competing with some other crops as well. And so that's going to tend to keep the wheat acreage from increasing quite dramatically. So that's, I think, positive from a price perspective on wheat. Of course, there's also some worry about our conditions next year, especially in parts of Saskatchewan, Manitoba. We're extremely wet, even in parts of southern Alberta. And if we do happen to have above normal snowpack, we could have some more planting problems next spring. So that probably wouldn't be favorable to wheat acreage or any of the longer season crops as well. So I think there's a number of positive factors that are working their way into the risk premium for wheat out there. I think one of the big concerns on the U.S. side, although we're seeing an increase in the wheat area in hard red winter, as I said, it's somewhat dry in the western third of their growing areas in Kansas. But also for soft red, those areas certainly, if we do see some premiums for corn and soybeans, and wheat doesn't rally in respect to that, we could certainly see some farmers in those areas replace the wheat crops with some row crops in the spring. So there's substitution that still could happen on some of these crops all across the northern hemisphere.
Right. So, obviously we had a lot of feed wheat in Western Canada this fall. What's been happening in that regard? Is a lot of that just going into the feed market, or has any of that been exported as of yet?
Yes, there's been feed exports, feed wheat this year already. There's a fairly strong demand for feed wheat because of the increase in feed values, especially in parts of the Pacific Rim where countries like South Korea will substitute feed wheat for corn when there is some feed wheat available. So that's happening. I guess the feed wheat sales to date have been good. One of the questions that this Australian situation brings up is what kind of competition are they going to bring into the marketplace in the Asian basin with the additional supplies of feed wheat that they have in the coming month or so.
Okay, so when you put your forecasting hat on and we look, from this point, maybe out 6 months, where do you see the price appreciation of wheat in comparison to things like corn and soybeans? Do you see it kind of following along, or do you see it ending stocks tightening and maybe it's got a chance to move ahead of the others?
I think there's a few things to look at here right now, and a lot depends on what scenario develops. The wheat right now is trying to build in a premium to corn, especially because of some of the potential production difficulties that we see. If there's a perception that wheat crop isn't improving, and that we see some, even if we did see another problem, let's say in Russia or in Europe, develop that would cause some threats to production, I think you would see the wheat premiums remain very, very strong. Of course, what has to happen in the coming months also, though, is corn and soybeans are going to have to come out and try to figure out what kind of acreage they're going to be producing next year in the U.S. Corn Belt, and that we would anticipate is going to result in prices increasing for those commodities in the coming months.
Okay, Bruce. Well, thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks a lot.